In this life, every one of us has, at least once, and often many times, encountered someone who makes us irritated, uncomfortable, or even deeply hurt. It might be a coworker who always seems to create obstacles, a family member who constantly judges, or an old friend who, perhaps unintentionally, says something that cuts us to the core. In those moments, emotions tend to rise quickly: frustration, annoyance, maybe even anger, along with the urge to distance ourselves from them. On the surface, it feels as though they are the very reason we lose our peace. But if we pause, take a deep breath, and look within, we may notice something far more interesting. Sometimes these very people are our unexpected teachers, the ones who arrive uninvited, yet bring with them the most valuable lessons about ourselves. In Buddhist teachings, there is a unique perspective. Difficult people are mirrors reflecting our own mind. This doesn't mean we are the same as them, or that we approve of their behavior. Rather, they awaken something deep within us, parts we normally don't see, or don't want to face. When someone makes us upset, our reaction itself becomes a map pointing toward the wounds or limitations inside us. If we only focus on their faults, we miss a precious opportunity to truly understand ourselves. Think about it. A friend makes a teasing comment, and you feel deeply offended. Others might laugh it off, but why couldn't you? Often, the answer lies within. Maybe you carry an old insecurity that has never healed, or a buried memory of being belittled. When that person speaks, it's as if they are holding a mirror up to your face, showing you exactly where the wound still lives. And so, difficult people can become special kinds of teachers. They don't teach with gentle words, but through friction and conflict, forcing us into awareness. Once we understand this, every moment of discomfort can become an invitation to ask, what is this feeling trying to show me about myself? That's the first step toward transformation. Through such encounters, we learn patience, because without patience, we instantly react from habit and cause more harm. We learn humility, because we recognize our own imperfections. And we learn compassion, because when we see that they, too, act from their own wounds, judgment softens, and understanding grows. The key is realizing, they are not enemies, but mirrors. Each mirror may be imperfect, even distorted, but precisely because of that, it shows us the hidden corners of our mind. On the spiritual path, such moments are golden opportunities. A gentle, agreeable person may make us feel safe, but they don't push us to discover our limits. A difficult person, however, is like a special challenge placed along our path. Overcome them, and we overcome part of ourselves. Of course, this doesn't mean we must stay close to them at all costs or accept harmful behavior. Buddhism doesn't encourage allowing ourselves to be continuously hurt. Boundaries are important. But we can protect ourselves and still learn from the experience. Sometimes, just observing our own reactions to them can reveal more than we expect. There are countless simple, real-life examples. One woman shared that whenever her mother-in-law offered advice, she felt insulted. At first, she would argue and try to prove she was right. But over the years, after practicing mindfulness, she realized her hurt came from a fear of not being recognized. Once she saw this clearly, her reactions softened. Her mother-in-law hadn't changed, and her words were still the same, but she had changed. And because she had changed, the relationship gradually became more harmonious. The truth is, difficult people are part of life. They may appear in our families, our workplaces, or anywhere we go. If we see them only as destroyers of our peace, we'll forever live in defense and resistance. But if we see them as tests, as invisible teachers, then every encounter becomes an opportunity to train the heart. No one becomes serene and unshakable by staying only in comfortable environments. Just like muscles grow stronger under resistance, our mind and heart grow stronger by meeting challenges. Difficult people are precisely that kind of challenge, not to be hated, but to awaken us. And one day, when we look back, We may smile and realize, the very people who once irritated us the most were among the most important influences in our growth. They taught us how to observe, how to restrain ourselves, how to see deeply into our own mind, and most importantly, how to love without being dependent on comfort. When we face a difficult person, our first instinct is often to label them rude, selfish, troublemaker. Once that label is in place, it's as if our mind builds an invisible wall, and we can only see them through the lens of that judgment. Yet in the Buddha's teachings, there is a gentle but profound reminder: behind every behavior, even the hurtful ones, is a human being who also suffers in some way. This isn't easy to practice. When someone hurts us, the urge to protect ourselves rises instantly. We want to push them away, to shield ourselves from the discomfort. But if we can step back and observe with a calmer heart, we may see that no one is born wanting to be unkind. Negative behaviors often have deep roots: fear, insecurity, old wounds, or circumstances they never chose. In the scriptures, there's a story of a man who had tried many times to harm the Buddha. Those around him advised keeping a distance or taking measures to protect himself. But the Buddha remained calm, even holding a mind of loving kindness toward this man. He explained that the man acted as he did because he was blinded by ignorance and suffering, like a blind person walking in the dark, accidentally bumping into others and causing harm. Instead of feeding hatred, the Buddha chose compassion, so as not to be pulled into the endless cycle of retaliation. When we look deeply at someone we find difficult, we might discover that behind their rough exterior is a story we have never known. The coworker who criticizes constantly might have grown up in a family where approval was rare, leaving them feeling they must compete and prove themselves. The neighbor who always seems irritable might be living alone with illness and loneliness. The relative who interferes too much may have experienced great loss and now fears what they can't control. Seeing the humanity in them doesn't mean we excuse harmful behavior. It means we choose to understand that they, like us, are human, carrying joy and pain, dreams and disappointments. When we see them as a whole person, not just the difficult one, the distance between us begins to close. There is a simple yet powerful practice for this: for 1 week. Whenever you interact with someone you find difficult, look for one small good quality in them. It doesn't have to be big, maybe the way they care for their plants, their patience in a long line, or the way they play with their children. At first, your mind might resist, because it's used to focusing on the negative. But with persistence, you'll begin to see that no one is made of darkness alone. Somewhere, even if small, there is light. This practice isn't about changing them right away, it's about changing our own perception. When we can see the light in others, our own heart becomes lighter. The compassion that arises doesn't just protect our peace, sometimes it can soften the space between us and even dissolve misunderstandings. There's a simple story that shows this. A teacher once had a student who disrupted the class constantly. She grew impatient with him many times. But when she learned he was living with his grandparents because his parents had divorced and he had no one else to care for him, her view shifted. She began to notice small moments, when he picked up a classmate's pencil, or when he drew with creativity and joy. Over time, their relationship changed, and his disruptive behavior faded. Seeing the humanity in a difficult person is an art of the heart, a heart that knows we are all, in our own ways, walking through suffering. When we practice this, we not only open our hearts, but we nurture a lasting peace, because compassion is the strongest shield against negativity. And sometimes, in that very moment when we pause, look deeply, and recognize that the other person is human, just like us, healing happens for both sides. Whenever someone behaves in a way that hurts or frustrates us, our natural reaction is to focus only on what we see on the surface, the harsh words, the sharp tone, the unfair action. But if we pause and look deeper, we discover a truth that Buddhist teachings have long emphasized: every behavior, whether good or bad, has its causes. Nothing arises out of nowhere. Everything is shaped by conditions that came before. The neighbor who always seems irritable may not have been born that way. Perhaps they endured a childhood without much love. Or they went through life-shattering events that made their heart guarded and closed. The colleague who insists on winning every argument might have grown up in an environment where showing weakness meant being abandoned. The relative who is controlling may be driven by a deep fear of loss rooted in the past, making them try to manage everything just to feel safe. In Buddhist philosophy, there is a foundational concept that helps us understand the roots of such behavior: ignorance, avijja. This isn't simply the absence of knowledge. It's a deeper blindness, a failure to see reality clearly, to recognize impermanence, cause and effect, and the deep interconnectedness of all beings. When ignorance clouds the mind, people act from distorted perceptions, as if looking at the world through a fogged and warped lens. From that confusion arise craving, aversion, and fear, which in turn lead to actions that cause suffering for themselves and others. Understanding this changes our view. A rude person is not simply a bad person, but a human being driven by conditions, habits, and unhealed pain they may not even be aware of. They are like someone caught in a nightmare, thrashing and shouting without realizing it's just a dream. If we only focus on the thrashing, we feel anger. But if we realize they are trapped in their dream, our heart makes space for compassion. One of the Buddha's key practices is seeing dependent origination, recognizing that everything arises because of multiple causes and conditions. When we apply this to people, we stop rushing to judge. Instead of asking, why are they like this, we start asking, what has shaped them to be this way? That question opens the door to understanding and kindness. There's a story of a Zen master whose student once lashed out at him with harsh words. Those nearby were outraged, but the master simply smiled and asked, "Have you eaten today?" The question seemed unrelated, but it made the student break down in tears. He had just lost his job, his family was in crisis, and he had gone without a proper meal for days. His outburst was not the real problem, it was only the flame sparked by the deeper fire of despair. The master didn't react to the flame. He looked straight into the fire. When we see the roots, our own anger begins to cool. We realize that reacting with negativity only keeps the cycle of suffering spinning. This doesn't mean we excuse harmful behavior or let ourselves be mistreated. It means we choose to respond from a place of awareness rather than from blind reactivity. A simple practice for this is, when someone upsets you, pause and silently ask yourself, what might have happened in their life to make them act this way? You may not know the exact answer, but even asking the question helps soften the tension and open space for empathy. Remember, no one is only the action they just took. Each person is an entire story, with chapters we haven't read. If we stop at the page we're on, we miss the whole book. And sometimes, by reading further, by looking deeper, we find that every hurtful act hides a seed of suffering waiting to be understood and healed. Understanding the roots of behavior doesn't just reduce our anger, it prevents us from becoming another link in the chain of negativity. When we no longer react blindly, we break the cycle of reactivity and begin planting seeds of peace instead. Perhaps this is one of the greatest steps on the path, to practice not just for our own peace, but to let that peace reach those still blinded by ignorance. Master your emotional response. One of the most common misconceptions we carry is that our emotions happen automatically and we are compelled to react to them. Someone says something hurtful, we get angry instantly. Someone criticizes us, we feel wounded immediately. Someone provokes us, we snap back without thinking. But if we observe carefully, we'll notice a profound truth: between the event and our reaction, there is always a gap, and in that gap, we have the power to choose. Emotions are not the absolute rulers of our lives. They're more like unexpected visitors knocking at the door. We can invite them in, sit with them for a while, or politely decide not to let them in at all. The problem is that most of us open the door too quickly, letting our emotions rush in and take over before we've had a chance to reflect. In Buddhist practice, mastering the mind doesn't mean suppressing or denying emotions. It means recognizing and transforming them. Anger, anxiety, irritation, they're like waves in the ocean of our mind. If we don't know how to observe them, the waves will sweep us away. But if we can stand still and watch, we'll see that they rise and fall, never lasting forever. One simple yet remarkably effective technique is the 3 deep breaths practice before responding. First breath, recognize the emotion. I am angry, I am sad, I am feeling triggered. Second breath, release physical tension in your shoulders, forehead, and neck. Third breath, ask yourself, how can I respond in a way I won't regret later? Just 3 breaths, but that pause is enough to stop words that could damage a relationship, or prevent an action we might later need to apologize for. Imagine this. You're in a meeting and a colleague makes a sarcastic remark. Normally, you'd fire back with a sharper tone. But today, you take 3 slow breaths. In that pause, you realize their comment doesn't define your worth. You reply calmly, or perhaps choose not to reply at all. The meeting moves on without tension, and you walk out feeling lighter. Mastering your emotional response is not about weakness, it's about strength. It's the kind of strength that allows you to hold your ground without hurting others, to win without leaving scars. Of course, this isn't something you perfect overnight. It takes practice. In the beginning, you might still react quickly. But each time you remember to return to your breath when an emotion rises, you strengthen the mental muscle of choice. Over time, you'll notice a shift. You're not just reacting anymore, you're choosing. Psychologist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl captured this perfectly. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. When we respond with calmness, it's not because we're passive, it's because we're free. No one can push our buttons and make us dance to their tune. That freedom is a form of quiet power. Learning to master emotions is like learning to steer a boat on the open sea. You can't stop the wind or the waves. But you can learn to use the oars to guide your course. The waves of emotion will still come, but instead of being pulled under, you'll know how to ride them. The power of silence. In one Dharma talk, someone asked the Buddha, "When someone insults or provokes me, what should I do?" The Buddha smiled and replied, "Silence is sometimes the most powerful answer." This teaching is not an encouragement to avoid or hide. On the contrary, it requires tremendous inner strength to remain still in the midst of provocation, to be like a calm lake even when stones are thrown into it. The silence here is not passive submission, but a deliberate choice to stop feeding the fire of negativity. Think of it this way, when someone is angry at you, it's as if they're throwing you a ball of fire. If you respond with immediate harsh words, you're throwing another fireball back, and now both of you are burning. But if you remain silent, the fireball falls to the ground and extinguishes itself. Silence has a mysterious power. It forces both sides to sit in the same pause. In that pause, emotions can cool down, and reason has a chance to speak. Often, it is our silence that makes the other person realize the weight or unkindness of their words. In Eastern culture, silence is sometimes seen as a form of compassion. By not striking back, we refuse to wound the other person again. We also refuse to wound ourselves. However, silence doesn't mean swallowing anger or burying emotions so deep they hurt us later. If silence is just a mask for suppressed resentment, that resentment will eventually burst out in another form. The kind of silence the Buddha spoke of is mindful silence, where we are fully aware of our emotions, but choose not to let them turn into harmful speech or action. A simple yet effective practice is, pause for 10 seconds before speaking, in any tense conversation. During those 10 seconds, you can recognize the emotion rising within you. Take a deep breath to bring your mind back to the present. Ask yourself, will what I'm about to say heal, or will it make things worse? 10 seconds may seem short, but it can be the difference between saving a relationship and breaking it, between a calm discussion and a heated argument. There's a saying, silence is not always golden. But when words become dangerous, silence is diamond. In our fast-reacting modern world, where people often speak before thinking, silence becomes a rare and valuable skill, one that can keep us from being swept into the whirlpool of conflict. Silence also creates a field of calm energy. When we do not speak, we do not feed another person's emotional flames. Just as a fire needs oxygen to burn, anger needs reaction to survive. Without reaction, it fades away. Think back to the times you chose silence instead of arguing. Chances are, afterward you felt lighter, and the relationship suffered less damage. That's when you realize, sometimes, real strength lies in saying nothing at all. Ultimately, silence not only preserves peace in the present moment but also nurtures long-term wisdom. When we refrain from reacting too quickly, we have the space to observe ourselves, observe others, and understand the deeper causes of conflict. The Buddha compared silence to the vast sky. Even when storms arise, the sky remains spacious and unmoved. When our mind becomes like that sky, both our words and our silences carry the power to heal. Boundaries with compassion. There's a common misunderstanding, both in spiritual practice and in everyday relationships, that compassion means accepting everything, enduring without limits, and sacrificing yourself until you're exhausted or hurt. In truth, compassion never means allowing others to harm you. In Buddhism, compassion, karu, is the wish for all beings to be free from suffering. But to truly help someone out of suffering, we must have enough wisdom to know when to move closer and when to keep a distance. Without wisdom, our compassion can easily turn into permissiveness, or even silent participation in harmful behavior. It's like rescuing someone who is drowning. If you jump in without knowing how to swim, both of you may go under. True compassion is finding a way to help that keeps both people safe, maybe by calling for help, or throwing a life buoy. The art of saying no without creating resentment. In life, there will be times we need to say no to a request, to a behavior, or to a recurring pattern in someone's life. The key lies in how we say it. A gentle, understanding refusal can help the other person feel respected rather than rejected. For example, instead of saying, "No, I don't want to help, I'm tired," you could say, "I'd really like to help, but right now I need to focus on this. If possible, I can support you another time." The difference is subtle but powerful. One shuts the door completely, while the other leaves it slightly open, preserving connection and empathy. Saying no is not about cutting someone off, it's about protecting your time, energy, and mental well-being, so you can give sustainably in the future. Keeping distance while keeping goodwill. Maintaining distance doesn't mean becoming cold or resentful. It's about protecting yourself from harmful energy or actions, while still wishing the other person well. One way to practice this is by setting internal boundaries. Don't let someone's words or actions shake your self-worth. Don't try to change them when they're not ready to change. Still send them good wishes, through thoughts, prayers, or small acts of kindness that don't harm you. For example, if you have a relative who often speaks harshly, you might choose to spend less time in direct conversation, but still send greetings. Still wish them good health, and still offer help when they truly need it and you have the capacity. A lesson from the Buddha. In many stories, the Buddha was compassionate but never allowed harmful actions to continue unchecked. He gave guidance, but if someone refused to listen, he didn't cling to the idea of changing them immediately. He kept his heart open, but he also kept his inner freedom intact. This reminds us that compassion must go hand in hand with wisdom. Compassion opens the heart. Wisdom ensures the heart stays unharmed. Practice exercise. In the coming week, try this. Identify a situation where you feel pressured or taken advantage of. Write a compassionate no, a statement that protects you while showing goodwill. Practice saying it in front of a mirror to ensure your tone is soft and free of judgment. As you practice, you'll start to see that boundaries are not walls that shut people out, they are fences that protect the garden of your heart. With healthy boundaries, you have the space to nurture compassion for the long run, instead of letting it be drained away. Let go of the need to win. In daily life, many conflicts don't actually come from the real issue at hand, but from the ego's desire to win an argument. It could be over a single sentence, an opinion, or a different way of doing something, but the moment the mindset of, I must be right and they must be wrong, appears, the conversation can quickly turn into a battlefield where each side tries to protect their pride and prove themselves superior. Why the habit of wanting to win is dangerous. When the mind is obsessed with winning, we unconsciously start to see the other person as an opponent, not as a human being we can connect with or understand. At that point, the goal is no longer to find the truth or a solution, but simply to defeat their point of view. This makes both sides defensive, closed off, and easily caught up in negative emotions. In reality, even if we win an argument, we can still lose trust, lose connection, and lose the warmth in the relationship. A sarcastic remark or a harsh rebuttal may leave a wound that takes a long time to heal. From winning to harmony. In Buddhism, the goal of dialogue is not to determine who's right or wrong, but to find harmony, reconciliation. Harmony doesn't mean agreeing with everything or giving up our values, it means finding common ground to move toward together, instead of focusing only on differences. When we let go of the need to win, our minds open up. We begin to truly listen, not to find flaws or prepare our counterattack, but to understand why the other person thinks the way they do. This creates the possibility of a deeper connection, even when disagreements remain. The story of the Zen master who smiled when insulted. There's a famous story about a Zen master who was meditating when a stranger approached and began hurling insults and harsh words. The master sat calmly, occasionally smiling gently. When the man finally ran out of things to say, the master slowly asked, "If someone offers you a gift, but you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man replied, "Well, it would still belong to the one who offered it." The master smiled. "Exactly. In the same way, I did not accept the words you spoke, so they still belong to you." This story shows the power of letting go of the need to win. The Zen master didn't try to counter or prove himself right, because he understood that when the mind does not cling, no one can truly offend you. Practice technique, drop the ego. Notice the urge to win. When in a disagreement, ask yourself, am I trying to solve the problem, or prove I'm better? Pause for one deep breath. Just one breath can create space between your emotion and your words. Shift the inner question, from, how do I win, to, how can we understand each other better? Find the smallest common ground. Even in big disagreements, there's usually a small point of agreement. Start there. Benefits of letting go of winning. Preserves relationships, even in disagreement. Leaves your mind lighter, without lingering bitterness. Improves your listening and understanding. Opens the door to learning from different perspectives. Life application. This week, choose a situation in which you would normally argue, to the end, to prove you're right, and instead, consciously step back. Notice what happens when you prioritize harmony and connection over victory. You may discover that in many cases, losing a little is actually winning inner peace. Winning the longevity of the relationship, and winning over the ego's constant need for more and more battles. Practice loving-kindness meditation, metta. There's a quiet secret that those who walk the path of inner growth eventually discover. To truly find peace, we must learn to open our hearts. And opening the heart isn't just for the people we love, it's also for those who irritate us, upset us, or have even hurt us in the past. Loving kindness meditation, known as metta in the Pali language, is an ancient Buddhist practice taught by the Buddha himself to cultivate unconditional goodwill toward all beings, without discrimination, without conditions. Metta, more than just a prayer. When we practice metta, we send simple yet profound blessings to ourselves, to loved ones, to acquaintances. And, yes, even to difficult people and those we consider enemies. For example, may you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you be healthy and happy. At first, these words might feel like just words. But as we practice consistently, their energy begins to seep into our hearts. Metta isn't a magic spell that instantly changes others, but a gentle stream that gradually washes away the dust of anger and resentment from within us. Why sending metta to difficult people has so much power? Naturally, when someone upsets us, our first instinct is to avoid them or to send back the negative energy. The trouble is, every time we feed that irritation, the person most affected is ourselves. Metta works like an antidote for the heart. By sending goodwill to the person who frustrates us, we interrupt the cycle of retaliation and bitterness. We begin to see them as human beings, people who also carry pain, scars, and untold stories behind their behavior. And, strangely enough, as our hearts soften, the first person who feels lighter is us. A simple metta practice. Sit quietly, find a peaceful spot, close your eyes, and relax your body. Start with yourself, silently repeat. May I be safe. May I be free from suffering. May I be healthy and happy. Extend to someone you love, offer the same blessings to them. Extend to a neutral person, maybe someone you don't know well, like a store clerk or a passerby. Extend to a difficult person, this is the challenge. You may feel resistance at first, but send the words anyway, even if you don't fully mean them yet. End with all beings, widen your intention, may all beings everywhere be safe, free from suffering, healthy, and happy. An inspiring story. A meditation teacher once shared how, for years, a neighbor constantly spoke ill of him and created petty trouble. At first, it deeply irritated him, but eventually, he decided to include this neighbor in his daily metta practice. A year later, something remarkable happened, not to the neighbor, but to him. The neighbor hadn't changed much, but the teacher no longer felt any resentment. He said, I realized that when I wished them peace, I was actually giving peace to myself first. Metta, happiness as a side effect. The most beautiful thing about sending metta to difficult people is that the main result isn't that they suddenly change or start treating us better. The real gift is that our own hearts become more generous, patient, and free. A heart that is open is a heart that is hard to wound. When we're no longer swept away by the storms of other people's emotions, we move through life more lightly, with less stress and less anger. In that space, happiness becomes a natural side effect. This week's practice. Spend 5 minutes each morning or evening practicing metta. Include one person who irritates or frustrates you. After a week, note how you feel, not only when thinking about that person, but also in how you respond to other difficult situations. Over time, you'll see that metta is more than a meditation technique, it's a way of living. And in that way of living, you'll discover that love isn't a reward for the deserving. It's a gift you give to free yourself. Learn from the trigger. In daily life, it's impossible to avoid moments when our emotions get triggered. It might be an offhand comment, a seemingly harmless action, or even just a certain look from someone that makes our chest tighten, our mind boil, or our heart sink. Maybe it's a coworker who constantly nitpicks, a family member who criticizes, or a stranger online leaving a harsh comment. When we react, we tend to believe the cause is entirely out there, that it's because of them. But if we pause and look deeper, we'll see the story isn't that simple. The truth is, The other person is only the finger pressing the button was already there inside us long before they arrived. That button might be an old wound from childhood, a limiting belief about ourselves, or a fear we've never truly faced. When someone, intentionally or not, pushes it, emotions flare up and we feel hurt, offended, or invalidated. But here's the key. They didn't create the wound was already there. All they did was pull back the curtain that hid it. From a Buddhist perspective, the people who upset us are actually mirrors reflecting the parts of ourselves that still need healing. The Buddha once taught, no one makes you suffer. They only awaken the suffering that's already in you. This teaching is powerful because it invites us to turn inward, instead of pouring blame outward. If there's no seed of pain inside us, their words or actions pass through like wine through an open field, gentle and harmless. But when the wind blows through thorn bushes, it makes a harsh sound and might even tear the skin. When we understand this, we can start to see the value of learning from the trigger. Each time we feel provoked, we're being shown a part of ourselves that is still tender, fragile, unhealed, or immature. The difficult person becomes an unintended teacher, one who may not smile or speak kindly, but who still delivers a priceless lesson. To transform emotional reactivity into insight, the first step is to catch the very first moment a feeling rises. This moment matters because once we're swept away by reaction, the learning window closes. If we can just pause, take a few deep breaths, and create a bit of space, we can ask ourselves, is this emotion truly coming from them, or from a fear within me? When was the last time I felt this way? Have I been through something like this before? These questions open the door to tracing the emotion back to its roots. Sometimes, we find today's anger is an echo of abandonment, rejection, or comparison from long ago. Other times, we notice a pattern, the same type of person, the same type of situation, showing up again and again as if life is patiently delivering the same message. It's time to heal. One practical tool for this is emotional journaling. Each time you're triggered, write down the details, who, where, what they said or did. Record your feelings, the thoughts that immediately popped into your mind, the memories it stirred, and most importantly, the lesson you think it's trying to teach you. At first, you might be surprised by how often small, seemingly harmless things trigger you. But over time, you'll notice common threads. They all touch the same old wound, fear, or belief. And once you can name them, their grip on you weakens. I recall a story from a student who shared that she would always feel hurt and angry whenever her mother criticized her. Even a simple, "you could do better," made her chest tighten and her eyes well up. Through journaling and mindful reflection, she discovered the root lay in her childhood. She had spent years striving for her mother's approval, but rarely received it. As a result, every criticism now replayed that old belief, "I'm not good enough." Once she saw the pattern, she began practicing self-acknowledgement instead of waiting for it from her mother. A few months later, her mother's comments no longer crushed her the way they used to. Learning from the trigger is not easy. It requires us to take responsibility for our own emotions. This doesn't mean excusing someone else's hurtful behavior. It means refusing to give them the power to control our inner state. When we see a difficult person as a mirror reflecting our own wounds, we stop being so reactive and start healing from within. Here's a challenge for the coming week: each time someone frustrates you, resist the urge to respond immediately. Instead, ask yourself, what is this person helping me see about myself? Write it down. At the end of the week, read over your notes and look for patterns. You may be surprised to discover that the people you once saw as irritants were actually silent teachers, patiently guiding you toward inner freedom. And one day, when the same kind of situation happens and you find yourself simply smiling in calm acceptance, you'll know the thorn inside you has been removed. The difficult person will no longer be an enemy or a burden. They'll be a milestone, proof that you've taken another step toward peace within. Choosing peace over getting caught in the swirl of tension is an art of living, and also a challenge that requires constant practice of the mind. In life, there will always be moments when we feel swept into a storm, sharp words, thoughtless actions, people who carry heavy negativity. The natural reaction for many is to fight back, argue, or try to prove themselves right. But when we pause and truly observe, we realize that those reactions, however reasonable they might seem at first, often leave us drained. Handing over control of our emotions to someone else. The Buddha taught, keep your mind like a still lake, even if stones are thrown in, it will soon be calm again. A lake only ripples when disturbed, yet if it's deep enough, the disturbance quickly fades. The mind works the same way, if it is steady and grounded. The stones of life create only passing ripples, unable to stir the depths. But reaching this state requires us to watch ourselves in each moment, notice when the mind is being pulled into drama, and consciously choose to step back. Peace is not some random gift handed to us. It's the result of countless choices, the choice not to respond with anger, not to join in gossip, not to react instantly. Each time we make that choice, we lay another brick in the foundation of our inner strength, making it harder for outside chaos to shake us. Difficult people, in a way, are life's pop quizzes. They act as mirrors, reflecting the soft spots, the unhealed wounds, or the immature parts within us. If we pay attention, we'll see that the strongest emotions we feel toward others often come from something unresolved inside. They trigger us not because they hold special power, but because they press on our emotional buttons. When we see this clearly, instead of avoiding or resenting them, we can regard them as unexpected teachers, pushing us to look deeper and strengthen our inner calm. Choosing peace doesn't mean silently enduring or letting others walk over us. True peace is when we can set clear boundaries while keeping a gentle heart. We can say no firmly without losing our temper. We can walk away from a toxic situation without carrying resentment. This is the strength of someone who understands that peace doesn't come from the outside world, it comes from within. Each time we choose peace over drama, we send a message to ourselves. I deserve a life of lightness. This choice not only soothes our own mind, but also influences those around us. Peace has a powerful ripple effect, like someone standing steady in the middle of a storm, their presence makes others feel calmer too. One day, we may realize that the very people who once frustrated us the most were actually shaping us into something better. Without them, we might never know how far we've come in keeping our minds still. Because of them, we learn to listen more deeply, to understand more fully, and because of them, we discover the path to becoming a better version of ourselves. Choosing peace is a journey, not a moment. Be patient with yourself, because every time you slip into tension, it's another chance to practice again. Like a lake, no matter how many times it's disturbed, it can return to stillness if given time. Likewise, our mind will always find its way back to peace, as long as we keep nourishing it with mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. You cannot stop the wind, but you can learn to set your sail in the right direction. You cannot prevent every stone from being thrown into your lake, but you can make the lake deep enough for the ripples to fade quickly. And in each moment of choice, you will see that peace is not a luxury, it's been here all along, waiting for you to return. Conclusion: turning challenges into inner peace. Difficult people in our lives are not just obstacles blocking our way, they are part of the path itself. Every encounter that irritates us, every word that stings, every action that feels disrespectful is, in truth, a precious opportunity to cultivate patience, compassion, and self-awareness. If we see them only as troublemakers, we miss the hidden treasure within these interactions. The Buddha taught that while we cannot control the storms of life, we can learn to become the stillness at their center. External storms may rage with great force, but if our inner world is steady, the winds and rain can no longer sweep us away. Like a tree with deep, unshakable roots, able to withstand countless tempests without being uprooted, The mind that is grounded in wisdom and mindfulness is not easily disturbed by others' words or actions. The greatest shift happens when we move from asking, "How can I change them?" to asking, "How can I grow through this?" The first question puts our power in someone else's hands, depending on them to change. The second returns that power to us, because we alone decide how to respond, how to learn, and how to evolve. When we place our focus on our own growth, the things that once angered us slowly transform into lessons. Irritation turns into insight. Anger begins to soften into understanding. Next time you meet someone who tests your patience, pause for a moment and remember, they might be an uninvited teacher, helping you see the hidden corners of your own mind. They may not be aware of it, yet their presence and behavior are giving you the chance to learn something essential, perhaps compassion, perhaps calmness, or the ability to keep your mind steady in adversity. In meditation, nothing is meaningless. Every situation can become a spiritual practice if we meet it with mindful awareness. Even ordinary conflicts, when embraced with an open heart, can lead to profound steps forward on the path to awakening. If this message speaks to your heart, consider subscribing to this channel. Together, we'll continue exploring timeless wisdom that brings more peace, clarity, and light into our everyday lives. And if you wish to plant a seed of loving kindness right now, type Namo Amitabha Buddha in the comments. Each recitation is like lighting a small lamp, and when many lamps are lit, this space will glow warmly, filled with compassion and light. Peace is not a final destination, it is the way we walk each day. Difficult people do not take away our peace, they show us that it has been within us all along, waiting for us to return. And when we truly come home to it, we see that every challenge, no matter how harsh, can become a stepping stone toward true freedom and lasting inner calm.